What's up, everyone? It's your boy C-Roc on the What Are You Made Of podcast with Mike C-Roc. And we have a special guest today. He's part of my mentor group that I signed up for with the Cardones. And I'm going to introduce him in a second. But before I do that, I want to thank Nations Lending for helping us get this podcast off the ground. Nations Lending is a company that I work for, running a division in the Mid-Atlantic region and the southeastern Florida, Miami area. And I'm just so thankful for the team at Nations Lending for everything that they did for me, man. The graphic design work, the marketing team, and just being supportive of the What Are You Made Of movement. So thank you to you guys. If you guys ever need a home loan throughout the country, just reach out to me and I'll take care of you. My team is awesome and we'll walk you through the process. So without further ado, Richie Dolan. Richie is a performance coach, author, and researcher. He is performance obsessed, and I'm going to let him get into a story, but he produces thought leadership on the conditions of optimizing human performance derived from research areas such as performance psychology, neuroscience, happiness economics, and investor resilience, and applies it to human beings obsessed with results such as sales professionals, entrepreneurs, global brands, and investors. And I was just talking to Richie before we started recording here, and his list of accomplishments and achievements blows me away. And he admitted himself he doesn't remember some of them, or he doesn't know some of them. But I'm not going to get into every single one. But I mean, Richie's been around some legendary celebrities like Drake, Ice Cube, Mike Tyson, Lennox Lewis, Floyd Mayweather, just to name a few, and help them and advise them. And I'll let him get into some of that. But most recently, he is tied in now with the 10X movement, which that's something that's helped me, as you guys know, and you're listening, helped me get to where I am today and on this mission with the What Are You Made Of movement that is going to reach tens of millions of people. And so, Richie, welcome to the show.
My man, I appreciate you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity of being on your show. I mean, anybody that's really behind a movement of any kind isn't, in fact, reserving a life for the meek. I mean, anyone that takes on a bold act like this and is really fueled with the passion and conviction that you do, I mean, that's just so damn awe-inspiring. So good for you. I'm grateful for it. And I know future generations will be too, because you're teaching by example that, the future belongs to the bold. And you certainly are doing that with your show, what it stands for, and the difference you want to make for the millions of lives that I know that want to reach out to you and be touched by you. So thank you very much, Mike.
I appreciate that, Richie. So everybody knows about the What Are You Made Of movement. It's about your past, about going through your past and analyzing things that you've been through for your good, for the future, for training sessions to use for your future. And so I always start off by saying, Richie, what are you made of, man?
Luck. I mean, if you pull me apart, man, I'm just one of the luckiest guys I know. I mean, I wasn't born in the lucky sperm club. I wasn't gifted with an incredible background of a family that grew me and built a childhood behind a white picket fence. I came from a broken home. I'm a high school dropout, and for all the statistical purposes, man, I am a living impossibility. I've defied the odds, being where I am, and that's why I'm really not ever keeping track nor score of the accomplishments that we both were joking around, how many of which I forgot, because I really have become a byproduct of always being forward facing, not rear view mirroring. I don't drive my car looking in the rear view mirror, looking at what I've done or where I've been. I mean, I'm only as good as what I'm doing today. So I think what I'm made out of is just sheer luck, pure resilience, and an absolute undying thirst for more. So I think that combination is what really set my course into a drive mode that had me hit the legends, icons, and gods, if it were, in the world of thought leadership and iconic thinking, and I mean mega branding, and now of course the world of Grant Cardone. So it's definitely not by mistake. It's not by chance. It truly is by a bigger design. So I'm just grateful. I'm humbled. I'm so super blessed to just be where I am and be who I am.
That's awesome, man. And so you say luck, and one of the things that I want to encourage people, there's luck involved, but I want you to describe or define luck and what luck means to you, because luck can mean different things to different people, right? And I don't want people to be discouraged and think that you have to be lucky, depending on their definition of it, to accomplish things, right? So what's your definition of luck when you say that?
Hey, look, man, I know Oprah said it first where she said, there's no such thing as luck because luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And I mean, to take this down another level, of course, because we're just having a friendly chat and a little banter, but I mean, that's really what it comes down to, really getting yourself clear on what you want so you know what actions to take. And I think what has the rubber meet the pavement is the fact of pressing the gas and pressing it hard. And so I've been that guy where as soon as I knew what I wanted, I was gone and going forward. So for me, I know I would agree with Oprah that luck is where preparation meets opportunity. And if it ain't happening, make it happen. And be
Right.
really, in fact, I mean, unshakable around, be relentless for, be, as Grant would often say, be obsessed about just making it so. And that's probably a large reason why much of who Grant is and what he stands for really resonates with me, because a big part of my ethos, my DNA, the way I rock and roll is really aligned with the way his spirit rocks and rolls. And so it's not very difficult to in fact align with that ideology, that philosophy, that approach in life, because I've really truly done the same thing. If it's worth doing it once, then it's easy doing it 10x.
Right.
And so that's an easy ratio of fall suit. And so
Right.
to just make sure I paraphrase that, look, luck is where preparation meets opportunity, and preparation meaning having the clarity, having a focus, and having a commitment to be in action fully, no matter what the odds are and no matter what the world says, but because you say so.
Right. Right. And now take us back a little bit because you said you're a high school dropout.
Mm,
Now I'm a college dropout.
mm,
And I've told the story on my podcast before that I was going to, I think there was some disengagement in college for myself. But that disengagement came from the fact of I didn't have any focus on what I wanted
mm.
necessarily. And so I'm in college trying to learn things that people are throwing at me, but I didn't have any that clear intention of what I really wanted to accomplish. I had a football career in college. It kind of fizzled and didn't have that direction. Once that happened, I didn't re-grasp onto something else. So now, as far as going to college and graduating, I don't think it would have made much of a difference because I think what I'm made of is the fact that I did that and some of the things that I've learned from it. But being a high school dropout, man, when did you think that you really grasped? I want to go back to that. When did you really grasp your intention and vision of what you wanted to do and what you wanted to accomplish?
Dude, I think it just started with survival. I mean, so coming from a broken home, my parents parted ways when I was about 5. So I already learned what a disconnected, discombobulated family looks like. And they had the kind of breakup where when I spent time with my dad, he would drop me off, curbside. And over time, it was like, a block or two away from the house. And then over time, I was kind of visiting him on my own at the age of, 9, 10, 11, hitting public transit to go visit my pops. And then, of course, life takes over and you don't see him as often as you normally would. So, I mean, their inability to keep a real, true, connected relationship really cost me the relationship to parents. But with all that being said, my mother remarried and living with a father who had strict rules, of course, and being a rebel with a cause, and technically, well, of course, in my view, because I had no cause, just being a pure rebel at the age of 16. I mean, he said, "Look, it's either my way or the highway." I said, "Done." So with 2 Glad kitchen bags, I filled it up with all the clothes I owned and hit the road. Moved in with a friend and thought this will be easy, and didn't realize that cable that came out of the wall was actually that there was an expense to it. I didn't realize that electricity cost something. I thought it came with the building. I didn't know that when you wash your clothes, it had to be driven by coins. All these things I just didn't know because I was 16 and at that time. And so I grew up in a real hurry. And so I think a big part of my motivation really came from just sheer survival. I had to make rent. I had to pay for food. I had to just, take care of myself. And so I grew up real fast. And I think I already knew I was growing up quite quickly, given I came out of a broken home and there was a lot of mature themes around my life. But to fast forward only a little bit, the turning point for me was watching a movie called Wall Street, and it featured Gordon Gekko, played by the legendary actor Michael Douglas. And I just remember the movie without having to cite the lines and what the ideology behind it was. I was just enamored with the idea, like, oh my God, there's a whole world out there that looks like they got it together. Notwithstanding the skullduggery that goes on in the movie, of
Right.
course. For
Right.
those who haven't watched it, I don't want to ruin it for you, but I thought, wow, this thing called the stock market's actually a place. And this thing called Wall Street is where this happens. And I mean, they do it like this and they drive like that and they eat like this. Like I just knew, I think that was a real big turning point for me as I knew I wanted that. So, I snuck back into in the house I was actually kicked out of. stole my dad's suit, the only one he owned, stole a tie that he left still knotted because I didn't know how to tie one, and took two shirts that were 50-50 polyester and cotton. So I brought a can of spray silicone so I can actually make sure it's you call it starch.
Right, right.
And with all those goods, I mean, I went and applied to be a cold caller, what they call a cold call cowboy, someone that pounded the phones 300 times a day and said, hey, it's Richie Dolan. I'm calling you from XYZ stock brokerage. We got a stock that's performing today. It should double in value by close bell. Don't suppose you got $25,000 you want to see double in value by the end of the day. And if you can't afford to miss that, then great, let's go. If you can't afford to miss that, then hey, no problem, next.
So like boiler room.
That you got it. But in the boiler room world, they were hitting the phones and selling, fraudulent stocks, like stocks that just would never have a hope in hell. But I worked for a really reputable company at the time that later turned into Merrill Lynch and then later became an iconic, legendary institution. But for 2 years, that's where I cut my teeth. And so from there, I got introduced to, hey kid, you got some real grit, you got some real determination, and man, you're hitting the numbers. Now, what I didn't know, C-Roc, was I was hitting numbers not because I was motivated and not because I just came off some coals or I drank some Kool-Aid. I mean, it's because I got to eat. So I really was coming from the place where if I don't make money this week, man, I'm going to get kicked out of this place that I've snuck into. I'm not going to be able to put food on the table so I can actually nourish myself. And I was full of ego back then too. So I was working out and paying for stuff that you put in your body to make you look a little bit bigger and look a little bit sexier. And so, I had an appetite for money. But so with that being said, they said, look, let's throw this kid in a workshop. Let's send him down south to this program. Let's send him over here in this part of the world. They wanted to weaponize me because I was so damn good at it. So I really believe that I really perfected my craft at being one of the most aggressive sales guys the floor had ever seen and maybe the street had ever given birth to the point where I started leading training programs. I then co-authored programs that now is taught in universities on how to sell and market wealth management services. I don't need to get into the millions of dollars raised or the billions of dollars in exposure because none of it really matters. But I mean, I'm just so damn lucky that what it really came down to, C-Roc, was two things. One, something really woke me up and catalyzed me, right? So that movie did it all. I mean, I could have watched I should have watched Days of Thunder. And I could have become a race car driver, or I could have watched Apollo 11 and become an astronaut. But it just so happened that movie Wall Street spoke to me. So the catalyst, the fuse was lit, the fire was ignited. The second, though, and this is the one that as a result of being in this space now and being surrounded by incredible teammates at Cardone Enterprises, is I had great mentors. I mean, I had guys, largely guys, I would love to say girls, but I didn't have any female mentors, but guys who said, listen, kid, you got to follow me. You got what it takes. You've got some drive. You've got some balls. You've got some gut. Let's really perfect you so that you could really enjoy a great life. And I was so darn, again, blessed to just be able to attract that kind of people in my life who said, come with me, I'll show you the ropes. And so I spent the first decade of my professional life from at that time, 19 years of age, right through to my 30s, being only in the wealth management industry, only being in the investment banking business. And that built my financial foundation. And I think the foundation of what makes me who I am.
And that surrounded you with some people that allowed you to have connections, which, I feel like I wasted, honestly, I didn't waste it, but to some extent wasted the first 40 years of my life, because over the last year and a half since I've been introduced to Grant and the 10X movement, I'm an animal. I mean, I'm really like, I had this inside of me. Right. And if people kept this trying to shut me down, man. And we talk about this all the time in our mentor group, but I really felt this way. And I just felt like so alone and isolated. And I'm transparent on my show for my listeners because I want everybody to understand when they start feeling like this, that they're not the only one. But I would feel so isolated. And when I started our company with the mortgage company, I would be hard on people. Like, this is what it's going to take, guys. We need this, this, and this, and you got to do this. And then I'd have some people in our organization saying, guys, Mike, C-Roc, you're being too hard. You're being too hard. They're going to leave. And then we would be mediocre. And I wasn't sure. I was conflicted for the longest time with this. We had success at a company and we started making money, but the foundation that we created was very fragile, and it ended up crumbling because it wasn't built on culture and accountability And so when we went around this second time around with Nations Lending, where I work now for the last 2 years, we started with culture. We started with a good foundation and accountability, those two things. And I learned my lesson. But so my point was, the first 40 years, I feel like I wasted, because when I got involved with Grant, and then as this past year's gone on, and then with the mentor call, what's happened for me is I've gotten validity for the way I felt. And once that happened, man, the animal inside of me is now being unleashed, and everybody just better look out, because I got a lot of time to make up for. 40 years, I feel like I wasted with that caged in, and now I'm short time. So I got to hyper speed. Everything's got to move faster.
You know,
So
I know this is all about what you're made out of, but, you know, we're talking about what you're also made out of. And I want to invite you to a possible view of how you hold those 40 years. And because I share this with you, that I want you to know that the power and magic and genius that you are would not be possible had it not been for the way those 40 years unfolded.
right.
It's almost like, you know, there's the old adage of, you know, the older you get, you're like a good fine wine. You get better with time. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So the older it gets, the more mature it becomes. And that's well largely true with good bottles of wine. But the same goes with human beings. I mean, we really have and rock the lives we have that's driven by all the good and all the bad and all the missings from our life. So like for me, for example, I know that a big part of why I became financially successful and largely independent was I would be damned if I would go back home. I'd be damned if I'd go back home in any way, shape, or form and ask for money. In fact, I did it once. I asked for $400, and my stepfather at the time says, "Well, what means have you got of paying it back?" I said, "Well, I can pay it back, but I need $400 to be able to do this and do this so I can actually advance my career." And he says, "I don't see it possible. I just don't see how you're going to be able to pay that money back. And so therefore you'll have to go and fend for yourself." So I know that for me, it was a bit of a big FU. Like, I mean, so me wanting to go do it was, I'm going to show you, like, you know, Michael Jordan, seeing how he got cut, but from varsity,
Oh, yeah.
best thing that happened for him. Cause he's like,
Yep.
oh yeah. So for you and me and a lot of your listeners who might be in fact looking like you do and looking at the past like I once did, which is, man, I really lost this much time and that much time and this much time and that much opportunity, when in fact, that's what it took to have what's within you that's fired up so well to mature,
Right.
to come to full form, so that what's really in fact metabolized, right, is the escape from mediocrity, the escape from normalcy, the escape from predictable to being you. So the true you came to be given the 40 years that you had to go through. And I just want to make sure I share that with you and
Yeah,
everyone
that
that's
makes sense.
listening.
Yeah, you
I
know,
just
and
want to make sure
I can relate to the broken home thing, because my story, my parents, I don't know, I've never known them together, right? I thought that's normal, right?
that.
I don't know any different, you know, every other weekend thing with my dad, this and that. Ended up moving with my dad. But my thing, like Michael Jordan had, and like you had with that, trying to, you know, that borrowing the $400 thing. My dad crumpled up a $100 bill at me when I was 11 years old, when I decided to move back with my mom, and threw it at me and said, "Here, you're going to need this when you're living on the streets with your mother one day." And I looked up to my dad. He was my hero. He had a masonry business. He had a $100 wad of bills always in his pocket. I always looked up to him for that. And to have that signature moment where he actually peeled a Benjamin off and threw it at me. I remember that when I was 11, 30, 31 years ago, clear as day. And I was destroyed for a second, and it didn't last long. And I remember two things. One, I remember that I can't be the only one that's going through this. It just can't be. It's not, you know, because I thought that whole situation, remember, was normal. And number two, I'm going to be a role model. And I didn't know how I was going to help besides being a role model, but I'm going to help others that have been given up on. And so my whole life has been based on that. And anything I did, I've been trying to be the best, because I know people were watching me, and I was not going to let him win. So I feel what you said there. I mean, 100%, dude. That's like right on, man. Absolutely.
And it still happens to this day, man. I'm 45 years of age. These grays have come at an expense, and I'm happily, happily stressing them. But I mean, I you know, my mother and I have reconciled since, and my biological father and I have reconciled since. I just recently introduced my father, my biological father, to my son. I mean, I didn't want them meeting at all for a medley of reasons, and that's a different show.
Right.
But even still yet, I mean, there's interesting conversations that'll pipe up. And I'm like, look, man, I have built my life. I have got my life, and I don't need nobody. So I really feel that had it not been for those moments, had it not been for that adversity, had it not been for the crisis and crucible moments where I had to really choose who to be in that matter, in the moment, and for life, I wouldn't even be nearly who I am today.
Right, right. Well, and part of the show is I wrote a blog about the journey being invisible. And I was in Manhattan one day at a little bar in Rockefeller Center, and I ran into Mike Rowe. And Mike Rowe has the show Dirty Jobs, and he has a podcast. And I ran into him. He was having a drink. I went over to him and introduced myself. And I talked to him about his podcast, and I said, I'm starting a podcast, and I want to learn from people like you. I want to learn from the mistakes that you made so that I don't have to make them and I can speed up the process. And it struck me when he said, wow, mistakes. Yeah, you have no idea. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm thinking, here's Mike Rose, successful guy, right? Very, very well known. And he's talking about mistakes. And people don't think about that. They see somebody like you. They see somebody like Grant. They see athletes. They see all these successful people. And they forget about the fact that they had a journey to that, because most people don't share that journey. And so as I'm going on my merry way here, I want to share this journey of others and myself while I'm going through it so people can see that. So they don't get discouraged when they're shooting for something and they hit a roadblock and they think to themselves, well, C-Roc didn't hit that. You know, this isn't right. I must not be made for that. I must not be destined for that. So that's a mission I'm on as well. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. So give me some, you know, and again, this is a transparent show, no limits. Give me like maybe 1-2 mistakes that you've made that you look back and you're like, I learned from that and I'm glad I kept going. Just some input on that.
Man, the past is a big place. You know, the past is such a big place. You know, to quote Mr. Logan from Succession, you know, what I definitely have learned before I answer the question more straightly is that I've learned over the years that there's a real strength in being vulnerable. And we both admire who Grant Cardone is, largely because he's been very open about his past, his struggles with drug and alcohol abuse and his journey and, you know, that stress that it caused. And of course, just the fact that he had to fight those demons. I mean, we really, in fact, applaud the ability for him to be so authentic and available, to really be willing to share a lot of that, what some people might call dirty laundry, some people might call skeletons in the closet. What you and I've come to learn is the truth. And the more you're at home with who you are and who you are not, actually, in fact, really galvanizes your invincibility. So the strength that you want to fortify and the very strength you want to leverage and exploit actually only comes with you being really at home, really at peace with just who you are and who you aren't. You know, so there's some things I am and there's some things I'm not. And I think the mistakes I've made is allowing my ego, right, my sense of self, my concept of myself, say that, hey, I'm a businessman. You know, I know better. Someone said to me, go right. And I said, no, I know better. I'm going to go left. And a lot of that has really bit me in the ass. You know, I think it's a matter of just not listening to people more, not learning more, not leaning in and admitting more so that I don't know the way and to look for help earlier. So I think if there was ever mistakes, and there's plenty, by the way, like my brain and my ego both say, what the fuck? You know, it's like what's my fun do, man? It's like there's a face off in my body, metaphysically. But for me, it's, I think the constant theme of mistakes I've made would probably be summed up in, I thought I knew what I was doing and I had to learn the hard way. Number 2 is I mislearned what to do and so therefore did it wrong. Or 3, right, and I take full ownership for this, is I leaned on others, right? I leaned on others, partners, associates, team, you know, other people to do what I thought they were doing was right, when in fact they didn't know what they were doing either. So that really hurt. So
can you elaborate on that point?
Well, I've been in partnerships before. You know, I've been in partnerships, and you know, you've got the left and I got the right, and you know, sometimes the left ain't knowing what it's doing, so it's going to impact what the right's doing. And so, right, you know, I've been in partnerships where I thought that guy was doing this, this, and this, and I thought that when he said it was complete, or this is ready, or this is compliant, or this is cool, I never got into any major trouble. But I just know that Had he had a clear relationship to our finances and our financials, we'd be a lot clearer as to what our sales should really be. If that partner was really, in fact, far more forthcoming about the current state of our marketing or the state of our relationship with customers, we would alter our customer engagement strategies a bit different.
Right.
So,
Gotcha.
so sometimes I have found myself at the effect of other people's errors in judgment, but I didn't own it. So I would say, well,
Right.
that's on you. You should step up. When, as Grant has often said, is that your only access to true power is to take ownership over everything. So I'm
Control. It gives you control.
completely, and that's where you have access to
Right.
your power, your genius, your gifts, your blessings, and all the other goodness that comes. And you say, you know what? No worries. I got this. I'm going to take it all over. So that's probably where big mistakes are. But if you had to summarize everything I just said into a real just audible, ego.
Right.
I think my ego's definitely gotten the best of me a number of times. And there's a really interesting trend and insight for all your listeners. The younger you are, the greater your ego and the less likely you know about it. So it's only until you age and realize that, oh my God, that was me.
Right.
Oh my God, was that really how I used to talk? Oh my God, is that what I thought? And it'll only take either time or maturity, and pray for the latter, because
Right.
in time it could be too late or it could just be too long. So I would
Yep.
definitely sum it all up in the ego. I
And,
thought
and and to clarify, when you say you need to listen to more people or listen to people more, it's the right people,
mm,
because you could also listen and be really open and sponge like to the wrong people, right?
well, and dude, listen, in that combination of ego and following the right people, let me give you an example of what that looks like. With my ego and listening to the wrong people, I learned how to golf because I was in the financial services business, which is the game you play when you're in that business. You got to learn how to, to navigate a yacht. You need to know your way around a private plane, and you better know how to play some ball on the links. And
That's one of my loves, by the way.
you got what I'm saying.
I'm a
So
four.
so so my guy, this guy Brett, was a national long ball driving champion. So check me out, man. I mean, I can crush a ball 350 yards, right? I can hit greens in par fives. But what good is that when I'm six putting?
Right. Exactly.
What good is that when I'm six putting? So, I mean, that's my point. That's where it's like, no, I want to have a real great long game. And I'm going to talk to this guy. And when your ego is driving you, when your ego is guiding you, it's forming you, it's also going to kill you.
Yep. Makes
Because
sense.
now all of a sudden you're the joke. You're 350 yards off the tee, and you're 10 minutes behind the rest of the game.
And by the way, so I got people that outdrive me all the time. And my favorite thing is I'll hit my shot to the pin somewhere on the green, right? I aim the center of the green, right? Hopefully two putt. And then they'll flub their chip or something. And then I drive by and go, nice drive. That's my favorite, man. And we have a good group down here in Ocean City, Maryland. We have some great money games, and then there's some good trash talking. It's just a great time. But man, you brought up golf now. I get excited about golf. So yeah, no, I get the point 100% with that, man. And there's so much, by the way, golf gives you so many lessons in life, and also for sitting with someone for 4 hours a lot of times that you don't know. That's one of the things that helped me with this podcast, by the way. I was looking back at past years. I would go to the golf course sometimes before we had this group here, and I would just pair up with someone that was available, right? 4 hours with a stranger. I met some of the most interesting people, and I learned how to sit with someone and talk to them for 4 hours. I mean, you gotta do something. You can't just sit there and not talk, right?
And you want to know something, just to riff off of what you just said? And I'm going to give this to you as my fellow friend and fellow linksman, is you also can learn a lot about yourself. Just try going out for a round on your own and by yourself, and look at all the things you get distracted by. The inability we have to just be present, to be off the phone, to stop checking texts and emails and Instagram, stop taking photos and selfies and video, and just be present to the game, your ride, your drink, your club selection, the wind, the nature. The purpose of what golf was always meant to do was to immerse people into nature, and to really just go for a great walk, or as it was once quoted, a great walk ruined.
Yeah. Some days, other
Some
days
days.
it's you feel like you're floating.
That's
Oh
right.
man. So yeah, that's man, I get excited about golf, obviously, as you see.
I can see it, man.
I
I can
took
see it.
Jared out. Well, he actually took me out, but I invited him, and we went to Turnberry I don't know, it was probably a month or so ago, and I was surprised by his golf swing. I don't know if you played with him. He's got a really, really good golf swing.
Does he?
Yeah, yeah. He can hit the ball. So hey, I wanted to ask you this too, and I don't like to golf notes too much, but one
And
of the
by the way,
things.
I don't want to leave you off. Like I left you off on a little bit of an edge. Really, I mean, really, like as in, I wouldn't know that he would have the patience to really have a great swing, because I find that golf is the game of opposing opinions, right?
Right,
You have to swing hard to go far, when in fact you got to swing soft to go far, right?
right.
You know, to make the ball go up, you got to hit down. So it's the game of juxtapositions.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't guess that Jerry would actually have a great swing, but it doesn't surprise me that he's good at a sport, because that dude's good at everything.
Yeah, he was
Whatever he loves, he'll be good at it.
He started at a young age.
But as you're saying, bro.
So yeah, my question: when you started being around bigger named people, celebrities, as you were going into that, and because I asked for my own purpose here, and an audience as well, a couple things. What were your thoughts like? What was your brain telling you at those moments? Like, let me put this into. Did you ever have the thing? First of all, did you ever feel like I don't deserve? Like, how did I get here? Like, wow. Just what was going through your mind as it was starting to take place, and you're starting to be around bigger names, speaking on stages with bigger names. All that was just happening. Was it like a whirlwind? Like, what was going through your mind, if you can remember?
Well, what I don't often share, because I never really asked about it, and I never really have a chance to really share it, but here's a good point to in fact start with, is how I started even being in association with big brands or big celebrities. So in and around 2002, 2003, I began to, in fact, follow a promoter who was producing full-day workshops by bringing out really big celebrity names. So at that time, we're talking about, you know, Dr. Phil and Lance Armstrong, Tony Robbins at the time, and Harvey. I mean, just an incredible collection of T. Harv Eker is the name I just struggled with and I just recaptured. So I mean, amazing days, right? So you'd have 5, 6, 7, 8,000 people in a room. And what I would do is I would actually sponsor those events with probably a handful of other people. I'd have a booth all set up, and I would have it be somewhere in the back of the room where I got to be in direction of traffic. I would be able to get names, get their names in a fishbowl, maybe win an LCD TV, and I would then follow up with those people to sell whatever I had going on. And I found that I was really building a really great list, but I wasn't really building a lot of customers. And I was really fortunate enough to be reading a lot of material at the time and realize, well, of course, there's no relationship between me and these people. The only people these people care about are people on the stage. And so what I thought was, hey, why don't I introduce one of the speakers on stage? So if I can do that, then maybe I can increase my profile, increase my credibility, and so this cycle could repeat, but do so better. So, of course, that's what I did. So I, of course, paid a little bit more to introduce one of the speakers. Now, of course, the big speaker of the day would get introduced by the big sponsor of the day. So I would not get that opportunity. But I noticed that if I were to be a little bit different, if I gave a little bit of a good talk leading up to the introduction, I might be memorable. So the needle moved a little bit more, but it wasn't moving as much as I wanted. So someone told me, well, why don't you give people what they want, what they need? I said, well, how do you figure that out? There's 6, 8, 12,000 people out there. How do I know what they need? What, water? Do I have to give away water or food? Are you telling me I got to start serving food? They said, just look and see what you notice. And it was a stroke of genius. I'll take full ownership on that one, C-Roc. But I noticed that what everyone did in an event was they took notes. So I had it. I thought, you know what? Why don't I say that, hey, folks, I'm really happy to be one of the sponsors today, and I'm sitting backstage all day, just like you, but on a different perspective. And I'm taking feverish notes from every single speaker. So if you want my notes, why don't you come register for them at my booth? So I'll be more than happy to share them with you. Well,
That's awesome.
I mean, dude, I got crushed. Well, this pissed off the producer because he's like, yo, man, you know, now you actually have my database, because I mean, I've never seen anyone get, I mean, I would have an uptake of, if I would only penetrate the room by 5 or 10%, And with every little alteration, I moved that needle up a little bit. I mean, I got 80% of that room.
That is
We would
awesome.
run out of pens. We ran out of paper.
I
Back
love
in
it.
those days, I mean, there was no phone picture, this and that, and scan that. I mean, it was just good old fashioned, fill out a form, we'll get you the notes. People would even be calling me saying, I didn't get my notes yet. I didn't get my
Oh
notes. And
yeah, that's
we would
awesome.
all of a sudden be in the notes business, to the point where the producer actually hired my company to do just that, to produce notes for the shows. Now, that wasn't the commercial success. Here's where it happened. President Clinton, your most amazing 42nd president of the United States of America, William Jefferson Clinton, was exiting office. And it was a very famous move when he declared that he would actually go and become a public speaker. And regardless of the motivations that he had behind him, he was a really, really highly anticipated individual on the platform. I mean, to put it just lightly, I mean, everyone couldn't wait to meet President Clinton, right? It's good to be here, Mr. Mike C-Roc. I
Charming.
really
Yeah.
am a pleasure to be here, my friend. I mean, he's just a classy guy. So, of course, I sponsor. And now this time, I'm paying the big bucks. I want to introduce President Clinton. So my big break came in and around July 2006. I'm in the middle of oil country, Alberta, up in Canada. And he has 2 shows that day, Edmonton and Calgary. And so I get the shot, and they said, look, you're going to do 1 introduction. You paid for 2, but we'll give you your money on the second. If Mr. President does not like you, you cannot get cleared for the second one. So I went up there, and before I did, you know what I did, C-Roc? I went in there for the kill. I went up to the Mr. President and I said, look, Mr. President, I'm really nervous meeting you right now. Actually, I'm really, in fact, doing a lot of poo-poo with my panties here. I'm really sorry. I got to admit this to you. But gosh, it's just a real honor to be here. And I just want you to know that if this is my first and only time doing this for you, man, it's going to be an honor. And he says, oh, as a matter of fact, it's my honor. So off he goes, and I go off. I do the intro. And then he goes up on stage after. And everything he said, I couldn't have even dreamt of. He introduces me. He ends up doing a call out. He calls me one of the greatest speakers he's heard speak.
Oh
And he
man,
declares for
that's
the room
awesome.
to give me the applause. Man, it was love at first sight. He clearly said, look, I'll see you in Calgary. Get your rear over there. And the reason why I share that with you is because what happened was I went on to share a great 7-year relationship with him. Where whenever he stepped into my country, I was the one that opened for him. And
How did you know what to say when you were introducing him? How did you know it was the right combination, the right content?
well, I can't take full responsibility for what I said, because first of all, if you do an introduction to anybody, I mean, most of the time, especially these big celebrities and especially a U.S. president, there's a script to follow.
Okay.
So number one is, when you get the script, you read it a million times.
Gotcha.
And do not assume your memory will remember it. Bring it up on stage and read it. And once in a while, your eyes will lift because you got the confidence, but do not assume that you've got the brain and the intelligence to remember the things that you've rehearsed. I don't care. Keep the script close. But one of the things I've also learned by introducing real powerful people to a stage is you've got to really express beyond words the humility that comes with it, the honor that it is. And if you're gracious, if you're honoring them, and if you're really authentic about it, I notice that it really moves the needle on attention that they give you.
Right.
So like to the point where you fast forward and I get a call from Ellen DeGeneres' office where she's doing an event on Super Bowl weekend in Miami on Saturday, February 1st. And guess who they want to open up the stadium for 25,000 people? It's going to be me. So,
That's awesome.
to be able to earn the reputation of being able to really move a room and get them warm and ready for an icon like an Ellen or an Oprah, or in this case, President Clinton, that's awesome. But that's where I started. So I started with a business intention, and I fumbled my way through tests and experiments to getting myself noticed. And it's consistent with exactly what Grant says. If there was ever a poster child on mastering the art, and it's an art, not a science, it's an art. It's you got to dab a little of this, dab a little of that, figure it out and recorrect it. I mean, it would be me, because that's what I did. I always aimed to get noticed so I can actually create some commercial success out of that.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've done over the last, I would say 6 months, really, maybe even longer, is every morning I wake up, I'm obsessed with getting known. And I used to shy away from that because people would say, well, you don't want to get attention. I mean, fly under the radar. Don't talk about this. Don't talk about that. And now every morning, and I'm trying to get my people, I have 30 employees right now, and I'm trying to be a role model to them to get out into the community, get the realtors to know them, get everybody to know you. And so I'm obsessed every single morning for this mission to get known for this mission, not for myself, not for C-Roc, ego wise, but to accomplish what I set out to accomplish. And my wife had to do some adjusting in her life as well. And I have to try to, for our relationship, I have to work through that as well. But for people listening to this, there's a lot of sacrifice that goes in to being obsessed with something for a positive, not alcoholism, drugs, but to be obsessed with something for a positive movement. My wife is sacrificing, my kids are sacrificing, I'm sacrificing. There's a lot that goes to that, but getting known is man, I'm really obsessed with it right now.
Well, and for me, I think it was a matter of being able to say that it wasn't just being noticed or being recognized or even being credible. I think it was more about, really, if I actually were to unpack the truth about it, was just being able to matter. You know, again, like, you know, coming back from my past of, you know, I didn't have the diplomas, I didn't have the accreditations, I didn't have a university degree. I mean, I didn't go to the right schools, I didn't know the right people, I didn't come down the right lucky chute. And so therefore, I really wanted to galvanize for myself a place. So, you know, as I fast forward and look at the history of all the stages I've shared amongst, I mean, across thousands of people, and worked with, I mean, all the legends that you know of, and people can Google me or look at my Instagram account handle and check it out and see what I've done and who I've done it with.
Did you just say Google me, bitch?
I didn't say
Have you ever
Google
heard of that when
bitch.
somebody says that before? You don't know me, Google me, bitch.
Yeah, but some people say that, and if you don't know what Google is, you should Google that. But all kidding aside, I mean that I think that's what I was really, in fact, struggling with was I wanted to matter. People had degrees and they had real great families and they had lots of money or they had lots of success or the best looking car or the greatest team and the greatest opportunity. I thought, well, how do I get noticed? And the best way to get noticed was let me go out there and be amongst people that really matter and people are paying attention to. And that gave rise to that bubbled up then to write books. So then all of a sudden I wrote books. So 14 books later, you know, I wrote books because I needed to matter and say, hey, I had something to say. And all those books came because I was constantly on stage and needed to talk about something different. So it really has been a real great run for sure.
Now, isn't there a fine line between when you meet a celebrity or someone that like you idolize, let's say, or somebody that's really well known, a fine line between being, you know, a fanboy, quote unquote, or gushing all over them, but also giving them the respect and appreciation that they deserve?
Oh,
right?
Totally. Yeah, totally. I think I've learned a lot of things, and I'll share a few with you right now and your listeners. And that is that, you know, celebrities know they're celebrities, right? At the end of the day. So they're not going to be offended if you ask for an autograph or a picture, especially today. Like, you know, asking for a selfie, you know, today is one thing, but asking for a selfie 10 years ago was weird because it'd be like the actual Canon camera turned in reverse and they'd be looking at you, what are you doing?
Right.
And you're praying that you're going to get a good clear picture of yourselves, only to discover after getting them developed that you just took the top ends of your hats off, right? But all kidding aside, I mean, celebrities want to know that in some way, shape, or form that you have a connection to them, that they've made a difference for you, or in some way they've inspired you. And so as long as you can communicate that really fast in a way that's really authentic, and it's not like just an order to, hey, Mike, I really love your stuff. Can you just sign this? Like if you slow down and say, hey, Mike, I just got to tell you, man, I really love your podcast. It's making a difference. I know the sacrifice that you're putting in to make sure it's of value to me. I want you to know I listen to it every single time you release it, and I push it out to my network so they can listen to it too. Thanks so much, bro. Hey, do you mind if we take a picture together, by the way, so I can just mark this occasion? Do you mind?
Right.
Boom, man. I mean, you know, some people might call that distracting. Like, well, you're schmoozing them so well that they forget that you're asking for the picture. Yeah, so what? But I'm at least communicating the value this person is for me before doing so. But where I noticed myself fumbling, and it's only happened, I mean, a handful of times, and I don't know if you'll get it out of me as to who it was, but when I'm really starstruck. And oddly enough, I've never been starstruck by the people that you'd think you'd be starstruck by, like a president or a talk show host or a legendary athlete. I've noticed myself getting starstruck by people I really grew up watching or listening to. So if I met someone that I had their poster in my room, or I listened to their music for years, or I remember my first dance and watching their music video, and if I met them, that's when I noticed I was a little bit different. I was like, gosh, this is really cool meeting you, man. And that's when security comes in and, removes me from the room.
So Richie, who did you grow up listening to music wise and really look up to when you were a kid?
Yo, man, I'm so inner city. I grew up in Toronto, known as the Six, the 416. It's where Drake was born, and he put us on the map. T. Dot, Toronto Raptors. But Toronto,
Drake is one of my favorites, man.
Drake's cool, man.
And you know what? He is 10x. He puts out so much content, right? It's always something new, never stops. And that's a lesson, man, for everyone.
He's all out, and I was really honored to do a lot of work for him around some of his spirits business, his whiskey and champagne business. But I digress. So Toronto was really always on the cusp of a lot of hip hop and urban listening. So I was a big hip hop guy. I loved my rap music. I grew up listening to Run DMC and Beastie Boys and Doggy Fresh. And so being an '80s kid and breakdancing and any opportunity to just kind of go at it. Those are my days. Those are my stomping ground days. So hip hop was definitely hip hop and rap music for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, I got one more question for you, and then I want to get into what you're working on right now. And but my last question before we get into that is, what's one thing since you started working with Grant? What's the one thing, the main thing that you've learned from Grant?
Man, this is a big deal. I've never admitted this either openly, but it's a good straight question, and it deserves a good solid answer. And I'll preface it by saying this: I'm one of the most motivated people I know. I mean, I'm resourceful. I own several companies. I'm in the investment business, the real estate space. I've developed stuff. I've done things all around the world. I'm really highly connected, and I'm very highly resourceful. But no one, and I mean no one, has reminded me of the power I have and the speed in which I really deserve to move at, and the level of success I truly can achieve if I get myself out of my own way than Grant has. Grant to me is like the true north of a human being. And Grant, and so I'm here, and Grant's like, yo, man, you really actually should be here. And he means it, because not only, and here it comes, if anyone's listening to this and making a note of it, I want you to write this down. To follow someone who's a living demonstration of what they stand for, that is an inescapable truth about the quality of the leader you're following, the mentor you're gaining, and the coach you've got. So for me, the biggest thing that's really opened up my eyes, my heart, and my willingness to really follow Grant into any dark hour and any unknown terrain is because I trust that this guy is the pointiest end of any opportunity I've ever come across, because he really is in service to the 10XU.
That's a great answer, man. You have a way with words, man. I'll tell you.
That.
And then to follow up on that, what do you think? And this might be difficult to figure out, but what is one thing you think Grant's learned from you since working with him?
Patience.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, God bless him, but I mean, patience. He's, I've been able to work with him for now just about maybe 6 months. And I know I might be letting the cat out of the bag as to what I'm working on, and maybe I'll explain it a little bit.
That's a good segue. Good segue.
But then the segue is, I originally sought Grant and his team out to do something small across my country. What I got in exchange was a no, but hey, why don't you do what you want to do in your country around the world? And that's where it's like, well, what are you talking about? It's like, well, we got this thing called licensing. I said, oh, it's not really licensing. It's actually his legacy. You see, Grant Cardone at 62 years of age is just getting started, but I mean, he's been a fine wine in the making for decades, and his work is going to impact thousands of generations to come, given the way he's taught, what he's taught about, and the way it moves the needle on all things important in life. So I said, you're right. His legacy is only going to live and survive the years and decades and generations ahead, providing we really empower human beings who are also too an extension of being a living demonstration of who he is, 10X. Mike, C-Roc, he calls you all the time because you're a living demonstration of living a 10X life.
Thank you, man.
And so, thank you, man. I'm humbled to be here with you and for that reason. So So what we needed to do was, build the foundation, the infrastructure, reshift and recreate the environment, understand the protocols, process, and procedures of procuring the right people and being able to have the right application process. So it's like we're building a business called Grant Cardone Global Licensing. But it's more than just equipping people to become either a speaker, trainer, coach, and mentor, or help people who are already well at it and need content, relevance, and impact. All of that's to basically say is that this is his legacy at stake. And Grant would admit it's the single greatest growing concern that he's got for himself because, it's what's most important to him. So I think one of the things that he's probably learned from me is that I'm a quick learner. I'm committed to learning. I'm open to coaching. I know I ain't got it right, and I'm not attached to an ego, not anymore. So there's nothing no one can tell me that would throw me off my game, and there's no one, especially him, that can say anything to shift, alter, or omit or delete that I would be hooked by. Like, what you said what? Or
Right.
I'd be like, done, got it. So, but the one thing I just surely hope that he's getting more of with me is patience, because
Right.
I'm methodical, I'm pragmatic.
Right.
I'm a perfectionist because, again, remember, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but I will get it right. So
Right.
I'm far more committed to the outcome and the journey rather than just the short measurables.
Thank you for answering those questions, man. I gotta just, from the bottom of my heart, man, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to have you on my show. I don't know if you know this or not, but this only started in November, this podcast. And I started asking people that weren't necessarily as well known, but that I felt that could have a big impact on people, and I want to get their word out. And that's important too. But then I started thinking to myself, I'm in this mentor group, and I think this is the biggest thing this mentor group did for me, was why not just go for whoever you think you want on the show and see what happens. And if they say no, then you still have the original plan. And I from the bottom of my heart, man, thank you for the content that you provided. I look forward to working with you in the future. And I just, I feel like this is sometimes, like, when I get to have people like yourself on the show, it's a one-way street that I'm the one that's benefiting. And, but if there's anything I could ever do for you to help you, anything in the future at all, just reach out to your boy C-Roc, man. I just want you to know that, Richie. I appreciate you, man.
Two things. Well, first, thank you. You're more than welcome. And it's a real honor to be here, as I said on the outset of the call. But I want to share with you two things, a statement and a quick closing off story. And the statement is that you did not, and I repeat, C-Roc, you did not start this podcast in November. This podcast started 40 years ago.
Yep.
It has been manifesting and maturing and aging like a fine wine. And it just so happens to have found its representation, its expression through this podcast, through this vlog, through this conversation, through the mechanics called What Are You Made Of? So it will be that. I just want you to know that. That's number one. And number two, the story, an old friend of mine, we used to be neighbors. His name is Robin Sharma. He wrote the book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And what's amazing about that dude in that book is that he always cites Sanskrit poetry, oldest language in human history. And this one poem he shared with me, I want to share with you and your listeners in conclusion, because I think it should really resonate with you, my brother, is that it was about a father and a son, and this father was on his deathbed. And the father calls for his son because he knows that his final moments on this earth and in this time and in his existence is coming to an end. So the son rushes to his bed and says, "Father, what is it?" And the father says in his final moments, he said, "Son, remember this. When you were born, you cried while the world rejoiced." He said, "Son, live life in such a way. Live life in such a way so that when you die, the world will cry while you rejoice."
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you,
Brother,
man.
your
Thank you so
podcast,
much, man.
your podcast is a service to mankind and the thousands of generations after us. That's what I stand for. I'm the curator and realization officer for all things Grant Cardone Legacy. And it's an absolute honor to be in partnership with you, my man. So I'm looking forward to doing many more of this. Okay. So
thank you. Yeah. And how can my listeners get in touch with you, engage with you, Richie?
They can easily, in fact, write me Richie at grantcardone.com. That's RICHIE at grantcardone.com. Or you can just check me out. My handle on Instagram is Richie_Dolan. D is in Delta, OLAN.
So listen, what are you made of? Following and listeners, guys, get on board, support Richie, support the 10X movement. This has meant so much to me in my life. My employees, their families, has changed our lives. And I just want all of you guys to reach out and give Richie some love and support. And Richie, again, thank you so much, man. And we'll put that in the show notes for you guys listening. And again, Richie, if there's anything I can ever do to help you out, man, just I don't know what it would be, but let me know.
Well, remember, man, if we're gonna do it once, we're gonna do it 10x. So it's coming.
Love it, man. Love it. Thank you. You've been listening to the What Are You Made Of podcast with Mike C-Roc, sponsored by Nations Lending, Home Loans Made Human. And thank you to Richie for appearing on the show today. And if you could, please do me a favor and subscribe to the podcast. Let your friends, family, coworkers know about it. Also, YouTube, Mike C-Roc Ciorrocco, the YouTube channel. And finally, the Facebook group, the private group, What Are You Made Of with Mike C-Roc, where we share our stories and inspire each other. Thank you guys for listening. Love you all. Thank you for being a part of the What Are You Made Of podcast. So that you don't miss future episodes, please rate and subscribe to the What Are You Made Of podcast on your favorite listening or viewing apps, and follow me on your favorite social media platforms. I would love to hear your stories and past experiences and engage with you further.